There's a pattern I see constantly in endurance athletes that I want to address directly. You're training consistently, you're paying attention to your nutrition, and you're doing what you believe are the right things for your recovery. And yet, despite all of that, there's an underlying fatigue that doesn't fully go away, not just after hard sessions, but a persistent baseline fatigue that's always sitting underneath everything you do. In most cases, the reason for that isn't what most athletes assume. And misidentifying it is exactly why it doesn't revolve. Hey, I'm Dr. Jason Barker, naturopathic doctor, two-time Ironman finisher, and 20 plus years working with endurance athletes to improve performance and recovery using strategies that actually address what's happening at that physiological level. Now, let's get into what's really going on. It all begins with mitochondrial function, and this is the foundation that everything else builds upon. Your body doesn't store energy and draw it from a fixed tank, so to speak. It has to continuously produce energy, and that production happens inside the mitochondria, those little organelles within your cells responsible for generating ATP, the currency your muscles and organs run on. Even small reductions in how efficiently that process runs have a noticeable downstream impact on how you feel and perform. When mitochondrial function starts to decline, even slightly, workouts begin to feel harder than the effort warrants. Fatigue shows up earlier in your sessions. Overall output quietly drops. And the insidious part is that this doesn't happen suddenly. It's a gradual drift driven by sustained training load, accumulating oxidative stress, and subtle nutrient insufficiencies. From the outside, everything looks fine. You're still training, you're still functioning. But the engine is running below capacity, and the gap between what your body is being asked to do and what it can actually produce keeps widening. Now, the second layer is recovery, and this is where the problem compounds. Training doesn't make you fitter. It's the recovery that does that. Training is the stimulus, the signal that tells your body to adapt. That adaptation itself happens during recovery through tissue repair, hormonal signaling, and cellular remodeling. Now, if your recovery systems aren't keeping pace with the training stimulus, whether that's due to sleep quality, nervous system dysregulation, or overall physiological load, you don't fully adapt. You just continue to accumulate the stress without capturing the benefit. What this looks like over time is progressive fatigue that builds in the background despite a training load that hasn't changed. You're doing the same sessions, but feeling progressively more run down. That's not a fitness problem. That's a recovery deficit that's compounding. The third layer is your stress response, specifically cortisol. And this is one of the most misunderstood pieces of the puzzle. So cortisol gets a bad reputation, but it's not inherently problematic, but it is essential. It regulates energy mobilization, supports focus and alertness, and helps your body mount and sustain a response to physical and mental stress. So the issue isn't cortisol itself, it's when the rhythm that governs it breaks down. Under normal healthy function, cortisol follows a precise daily arc. It peaks early in the morning, driving the alertness and metabolic activation you need to perform, then gradually tapers through the day so that by evening your nervous system can shift into parasympathetic recovery mode. When the rhythm gets disrupted, which is extremely common in athletes managing training stress alongside work, relationships, and life, you get the pattern I see constantly in clinical practice. Fatigue during the day, but unable to fully wind down at night. Sleep is lighter, it's less restorative. Energy is inconsistent, and training feels harder than it should. And the frustrating part is that more rest doesn't just fix it because the stress response is still elevated even during downtime. Your body can't enter the recovery state it needs because the signal telling it to stay alert never fully shuts off. And the fourth layer is nutrient status, which is probably the most consistently overlooked piece. Endurance athletes have significantly elevated demands for the micronutrients involved in energy production and recovery. Magnesium is required for hundreds of enzymatic reactions tied to ATP production, muscle relaxation, and nervous system regulation. B vitamins are essential cofactors in mitochondrial energy metabolism. Without them, the machinery that converts food into usable energy can't run efficiently. Iron is foundational to oxygen delivery and aerobic capacity, and even suboptimal stores, not clinical deficiency, just suboptimal here, can meaningfully impair performance and recovery. What I see in practice isn't usually frank deficiency. It's suboptimal status. values that sit within standard reference ranges but aren't sufficient for someone placing consistent high demands on their physiology. And standard lab ranges aren't built to catch this because they're designed to screen for disease in a general population, not to evaluate whether a regularly training athlete has what they need to perform. So that gap goes undetected. The athlete is told everything looks fine, and the real driver of their fatigue never gets addressed. Now, when you put all of this together, the picture becomes more clear. Ongoing fatigue in endurance athletes almost always traces back to some combination of these 4 factors: mitochondrial energy production that isn't keeping up with demand, a recovery process that isn't completing between sessions, a stress response that's lost its normal rhythm, and nutrient status that's adequate for general health but insufficient for performance. And these systems interact. Cortisol dysregulation suppresses mitochondrial efficiency, poor nutrient status impairs recovery, inadequate recovery disrupts hormonal rhythms. They compound each other in ways that make the fatigue feel stubborn and hard to address without understanding what's driving it. Getting clear on which of these is the primary bottleneck requires a more detailed look than standard blood work provides. It requires testing that examines the full micronutrient picture, evaluates cortisol patterns across the day rather than at a single point, and interprets results through a performance lens rather than a disease screening one. In the next video, I'm going to walk through exactly what to do about all of this, how to address each of these systems in a targeted way and start actually moving the needle on energy and recovery. If this was helpful, please hit like and subscribe. I post science-backed content on performance and recovery regularly. And for functional lab testing, individualized protocols, and deeper guidance, visit naturalathleteclinic.com. I'm Dr. Jason Barker. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.